Ooh, we are live.
Oh, Sup? It is winter time and there is snow on the ground.
Yeah, we got some snow. Like some proper snow. I was like kind of complaining about not having proper snow in the Discord a couple weeks
We
ago, or
brought it
maybe a
upon
couple days ago.
ourselves.
Yeah, but as much of a pain in the ass as it is to clear snow and drive in snow and walk in snow and all this other shit, it's important that we have it. So, yay snow.
Yeah, I was saying that to city people out here. They're like, it's cold, snowy. And I'm like, good. And they're like, what? I thought you didn't like winter. And I said, liking it is a different thing. I don't have to enjoy it to think that it's a good thing. And
Right.
they're like, well, why? And I'm like, y'all bitch about climate change constantly, but then you like, what, hate -10? Like, homie, I don't mean to pop your bubble, but fixing climate change means you're gonna have cold winters, okay? That's part of the deal. That's good for humanity.
That's the thing is there's supposed to be appropriately cold winter if depending on the region of the world that you're in, right? But in the region of the world that we're
Mm-hmm.
in, we're supposed to have a seasonally appropriate cold winter. Do you sometimes
Mm-hmm.
have cold snaps that are particularly cold? Yes. But with climate change, it brings about longer, more harsh, brutal cold. So it's just really fucking frustrating that people can't understand that concept. Because people go, oh, well, how is it global warming? How is it climate change? If, Texas is getting snow. It's like, yes, that's
Does
that's the
Texas
point.
normally get snow?
No,
No.
no,
Get it.
no, it
That's
does
the
not.
point. So close.
So close, Ed, so far. So close.
Let me just do a quick little check here. Does Texas have snow? Yes. Check. Are the ice caps also melting? Yes. Check. So why is it hotter up here and cooler down here? I want you to think about that for a second. Climate change.
Climate change in a nutshell. But who are we, right? We're only humans and we just live on this planet and we have to, do
We
human
have
things.
to overthrow corrupt government and infrastructure because I'm sick of living on a planet where we keep. Like, honestly, capitalism is going to collapse. We're watching the early stages of it happening right now. Question is, what do we want to do to build a better future when the time comes? Because we're going to have to grab the reins at some point. So just fucking get on with it.
It's not really
Happening fast enough for my liking.
But like the thing is, I don't know. I don't know how I would be functioning. Like, okay, so for example, we have started the looking for a house process. So we've got our fucking pre-approval. We talked to the mortgage guy, whatever. So we're pre-approved. And like I work in real estate and yet I hate it. You know what I mean? Like the concept of owning land that is not really ours to own in the first place. It's all just kind of
Mm-hmm.
it really the game and the system that we have to play in order to survive is at a huge disconnect with like my moral and ethical and spiritual worldview. So like that's what makes life difficult for me, I think. And I'm sure a lot of other people can relate. Especially if you're listening to the podcast, I'm sure you can relate. But so we started it and so like I'm happy that like, we're going to get a house, right? Like we're going to have a little spot that's ours to take care of and I'm happy about that. But like if all of a sudden today like capitalism was gone, like the entire like everything that we know was gone, it would be like mass chaos. You know what I mean? Like if it was just suddenly like taken away. So then I'm like I don't know if I would really want to live in a world of mass chaos either. So like I know it has to happen slowly, but I don't like it.
I
I
mean,
guess.
it doesn't have to happen slowly. In fact, happening slowly is the centrist. is usually the centrist take, is that, not calling you a centrist or anything, but normally like they advocate for slow incremental change is their whole deal. And the problem is that change is so slow and incremental. And the main critique is that they say, well, have you ever lived in blood and chaos? It's not good times. And if you had lived through it, you wouldn't advocate for it. But the hard truth that those people also never want to look at is that the world is filled with blood and chaos, just
Mhm.
not for us because of our social political status, right? Just because we're not going through it doesn't mean other people aren't, and doesn't mean it won't come for you eventually, right? If utilizing that method is enough to change it so that other people don't have to deal with it and that we solve the issue, it's worth doing it, right? But it's kind of like a cowardly argument to like say that, it's not, you don't want to put people through that when people are already going through that, right? Because like everything in capitalism in settler colonial society is precipitated on genocide and like colonial resource extraction, right?
I guess
And
the
that
argument would
has a very
be,
real.
why would you willingly put more people through that? Right? So it's like you acknowledge
Mhm.
that there are already people going through that. Why would you willingly put more people through? I guess is sort of
I don't
where
know.
the logic behind it comes from.
I think the point is that, oh no, I see what you mean. The logic behind it's flawed though, because it's not going to necessarily be more people, right? Like the thing about inequity and problem and violence like that is it doesn't just stop at one person. It's the old parable of tolerance, right? You tolerate oppression of trans people, and they're always going to narrow the margin on what's acceptable until they're dictating what you can and cannot be, right?
Mm.
You can't really allow that type of a philosophy to set hold, because even if you're not personally suffering through it, somebody else is, right? And that ultimately should be enough to motivate the person to do something about it. But if the person is selfish enough to the point where it needs to be brought up about how their personal safety should be involved in taking care of the community, it's intense and important to point out that if one person's not free, we're not free, because we're a collective. We're not just individuals. If an individual can be oppressed, a collective can be oppressed. That's how that works, right? So
Mm.
you need to remove those mechanisms of oppression and control for true liberation, right? It's like, yeah, it's going to be conflict, and yeah, it's going to have to bring like difficulty to the door of people who normally don't have to go through that stuff because of their socio-political status, especially if you're like upper middle class or higher, right? Like those are
Mm.
always the people who are saying, like, we've never lived through this type of stuff. How can you say that you want to do that, right? When in reality, the person who lives through destitution faces a struggle and a war of oppression every day in the basic necessity of trying to survive in a world where nothing's really provided to you for free, and everything that you are able to earn is always undervalued and undercut, so that somebody else at another table who already has more than they're ever going to need can have just a bit more, It's absurd, and we could always be doing something different about it, right? But the problem is that it's not bad enough for those people to want to change it, so they advocate for it to stay the same because they're already not suffering to begin with, when the person they're often advocating it to is like, I don't know, struggling to survive on their rent while like working 10-hour shifts every single day of the week at different restaurants, working like two different jobs, trying to pay for their kids. You know what I mean? Like those are the people who put the pressures on, not like the jackass CEOs who have like so much money they own multiple fucking yachts. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like the resources are there, the infrastructure is there. It's always been a battle of wills and propaganda and lies and deceit. And like that's why it's so important to like really challenge those ideas when they come up. And that's why I'm always so vocal about this shit, right? Because almost everything in our world is a war of ideologies, right? And their
Yeah.
ideology is already evident and in place. They want us subservient. They want a subservient underclass that is permanent and unable to rise up, that will always be subject to their whims, to give them whatever labor they need, to give them whatever distortion of wealth, whether the distortion of wealth is grain tithes to a medieval king, or whether the distortion of wealth is growing numbers in a bank account on a digital system where numbers on a screen translate to direct commodities that one can access, like food, clothing, shelter, like the basic shit to keep you alive, right? Like, it's divorced from any real meaning. It's just numbers on a screen right now, right? We have a post-scarcity society. People don't want to just stop working. People want to be able to fucking survive and have decency and dignity again, right? So, like, that's why I'm so fucking hard about UBI, because it's like really one of the only ways to make our society not collapse. Because, like, let's be real about this for a second. Capitalism is collapsing, period. Like, we're in the point of history right now where you know that 100 years in the future, they're going to look back on this and it's going to be in fucking documentaries. They're going to talk about how the pressures of the plague led to new wars and all this shit, and like rising costs and blah, 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 and corporate capture. And it's a new gilded age, right? Like, we're obviously in a historic level of inequality. The only way that things change from here is either we enter into a totalitarian dictatorship, which are always unsustainable and will always collapse in a dramatic and spectacular fashion. Actually, I don't know if they always collapse in a spectacular fashion, but they always do collapse, right? Because the fundamental premises behind running those societies are flawed, and people eventually, you can't sustain it, right? Like, you can't just constantly keep cutting your own limbs off. It doesn't work. You know, people rise up. People get sick of fucking being murdered and oppressed. Yeah, I came in on my soapbox today.
All good.
Yeah,
Not
apparently
really sure
people
how to
watch the
recover from
soapbox.
that.
Me just fucking vehemently shouting down capitalism 24/7.
Yep. Roll credits. That's the show, folks.
No,
Roll.
no,
Get
no.
sued from CinemaSins.
We've got like 45 minutes left. What are we, like 10 minutes deep?
12. 12
12.
minutes.
Ooh. New record. Speed run.
Speedrun.
Yeah, we're just gonna speedrun episodes. They're gonna be 3-minute episodes. Capitalism bad, witchcraft good. Thank you. Witches betwixt.
You get one impassioned speech per episode. No, you sound tired. What's up?
I'm tired.
Oh,
I'm
life got
exhausted.
you working overtime.
No, it's not even work. It's literally life. It's
Yeah.
It's because of like things like this where it's like I have these moments where I'm like I feel really passionate about like what I'm doing with the podcast and my magic and things regarding me and my life, right? And then my brain goes, "Did you know that everything is fucked in the world and you don't deserve to be happy for these little accomplishments?" And I go, "Oh, right.
You do deserve to be
Yeah.
happy, though."
Yeah, I don't feel that way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't feel that way. So every day
I'm sorry.
I get to hear about how fucked everything is, and I go, all right, why even bother? Why
No,
bother? Like, it makes me feel like, I don't know, like, I don't, like, what are we all fucking doing, you know? just
we're holding on for
feeding the
change to
machine
come.
that keeps us all down. So here we are.
Well, I mean, we're holding on for change to come, right? I think there's a lot of important conversations being had right now. Like, we're kind of in that day and age where, like, the revolutionary act is surviving and getting through it. And, like, if you have the energy to fight and have discourse happen, then, like, power to you, you know? But, like,
But it's frustrating because there are small things that make people happy, right?
yeah.
It's like, for example, and this is a point of contention within the queer community, J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter. Not so much J.K. Rowling, but Harry Potter, right? Suppose you are, you know, a depressed millennial like many of us, and you're like, man, I just really want to read Chamber of Secrets. Love that book. Comforted me. Really want to read that book, right? Whatever. And then if you post that, you know, in this age of everything sucks and everyone hates you, It's like, I read Chamber of Secrets tonight, and it just felt really good to reread that book again, and it made me think about X, Y, and Z. And then some motherfucker on the internet is going to be like, I literally can't be friends with you because you are reading Harry Potter. And that makes me want to become a fucking hermit. Is the
Why
fact
did something happen specifically?
No, it is not like this is not anything specific. It is just the discourse that I see on the internet of people who all claim to be left aligned, liberal, this, queer, that, and yet all we do is slash each other's throats online
So
for liking
I'm gonna say
certain
this
things.
though. That's a big indication of what is starting to get called terminally online behavior. And I've
Yeah.
noticed this, that people that only like engage in activism circles online and do this type of discourse online are extremely judgmental. There's a
Yeah.
person I know, I'm not going to name a name with this person. They're impossible to deal with because no matter what happens, they're always mad and finding a reason to tear something apart. They only respond to the emotions of anger, guilt, shame, and happy
All things used
escapism.
to manipulate and control people.
And happy escapism, essentially, right?
Yeah.
But those are all the things that you get in online spaces. There's a YouTube content creator named Elliot Sang, Sang. He does really good conversations. Two of them that actually touch on points that I was going to reference here is ominous positivity. You will be okay. You have no choice. Really good video. I heavily recommend watching that. But the next one was Western Society and the Loss of Third Places. The actual exact title is Nowhere to Go, The Loss of Third Places. And it talks about how, like, back in the day, we'd go to, like, the swimming pool or the movie theater and all of this stuff, right? But as our society changes and, like, people have less money and, like, we've been
People don't
forced to
leave their
stay inside
fucking house.
post-COVID, people are starting to lose physical contact with other people in third spaces like parks, pubs, cafes, and a lot of those
Libraries.
spaces. So people are becoming terminally online, and there is what you're complaining about. There is a growing reaction that people are having, and the quote that summarizes it is, "Why is everybody on the internet so mean?" Right?
Yeah.
And here's the hard truth that I've really come to realize: society's not getting worse. I mean, like, things. Okay, actually, no, that's wrong. Society is falling
I was gonna
apart.
say, you
Yes,
sure
but
about
people,
that?
but individual people aren't getting worse. The problem is online space is dominated by those who spend all their time there, right? When you're really busy struggling under oppression, like when I was working my warehouse job, um I'd wake up in the morning. I couldn't even text on my phone or like message anybody because I had to wake up, get ready for work, and get to work, right? I don't have time to be on my phone during any of that. And then we start work and I can't be on my phone during work. So I only get to like
So you're in
contact
your
other
like
human beings.
depression work bubble for 8 to 10
I'm in my
hours,
literal isolation bubble, yes.
Yeah.
And I get 15 minutes at coffee break. I get the time when I'm on the toilet looking at my phone to respond to critical messages. I get the
Always
35 minutes at my lunch break
always
and
shit
the
on
second
company time.
15 minutes. Yes. And then I get my second 15 minutes. After that, I have to drive home. I get home at like 4:20, blaze it. And then I have like
Oh my god, same.
not even 4 hours before I have to get home. Because if I get home at 4:20 and I do shit and relax for just 4 hours, it's then 8:20 and I have 40 minutes to get ready and be in bed for 9 o'clock because I need to be up for 5 a.m. Okay. So during my entire day when I'm working a labor job, I have 4 hours of free time And like
And that's supposed to
4
be
hours and 40 minutes of free time, not counting the
bathing,
40-minute prep time,
eating, cleaning,
and
whatever.
like playing video games, talking to
Yeah.
your partner, taking care of your pets, taking them on walks, taking care of your children. 4
Mhm.
hours and 40 minutes is about what I would get in an evening if I stay to a good strict schedule that lets me get enough sleep to recover for the physical job that I have to work. Okay.
Mhm.
Now you get somebody who's terminally online who doesn't have those criterias. They are in a state where they need to do something. They need to respond to something. They need to interact with something, right? Because that's what we are as humans. We do stuff, right? Nobody
Yeah.
just exists for a full day and does nothing. You're either watching TV, you're like listening to a podcast, you're like staring off at the wall, thinking, dreaming, you're doing
Something is making your
something,
mind go.
whether
Yeah.
whether you want to beat yourself down for it or not,
Right.
right? So people online then want to engage with stuff and engage with other people, and we're talking about people who don't socialize, don't go out, and don't realize how much their words have an impact on other people.
It's more
So
like they're
there's a lot of people.
picking a bar fight. you know?
It's just it's a growing pain is what it is, right? We're recovering from a isolation crisis, right? We're
Mhm.
also trying to deal with the fact that we're realizing that society has lost third bases and how that affects both youth and adults together, and how we can move forward, because a lot of these are actually like emblematic of issues of people struggling through late stage capitalism. We're poorer than ever, we're more divided than ever, literal fucking fascism's back. We have to sit by and watch a fucking genocide happen, and all we can do is like boycott and protest and call fucking politicians and tell them to get involved and do direct action shit. Like you can't physically go over to Israel and stop anybody from committing any genocidal act, and it's fucking disempowering, and it's driving people goddamn crazy because we aren't given enough to survive. We aren't given enough to even like make the bare minimum, and then we're told to have to do more, and then we get mad about it, and people want to post stuff online because they don't have enough and they're struggling and they're isolated, so they lash out, and we're in this cycle where everybody's hurting right now because of everything that's happening. I guarantee you, if you did a couple things and like, I don't know, intervened and stopped Israel from fucking genociding Palestine, and you gave like everybody $2,000 a month as like a universal basic income to cover basic expenses and shit, I could guarantee you discourse online would lighten up and people would start being better to each other. But people are being shitty because they're struggling to even want to live anymore. And that's the hard fucking truth, right?
Right. So it's
Nobody
like
really wants to live under this society.
right. And so it puts me in a position to where like let's say like on threads like I wanted to be like, "Oh my god, so excited, looking for a house right now." And then like someone in the internet is going to be like, "Well, it's fantastic that you have this money and you have this privilege and you're able to do this and blah, 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 blah." And it's like, "All right, fuck me. Yep, I'm the asshole. That's me." Like,
I
and
mean,
I react that way because of the way that I was brought up. The way that I was brought up was everything you
mm,
do is wrong. You're never going to get it the fuck right, so don't even fucking bother. Um, but at the same time, you have to grow up and be an adult and figure it the fuck out. It's like, oh, no, sure,
well,
all right.
let's. I understand the crux of those two issues. The big
hmm
problem there too is like those ideologies and philosophies are given to us by a generation that has ultimately failed. Right? Like
Yeah,
everything that the boomers did and set up for us has been a colossal failure. And not only have they made the situation what it is, they've made it incurable almost from their unwillingness to step aside. Like any other generation at this point in history going back would have like passed the reins a little bit. Like three fucking generations have come about since boomers, and they're still acting like they're 20 some year olds who are dictating world policies and like deciding the fate of humanity, because ultimately they still are dictating world policies and deciding the fate of humanity, and they have been for an egregiously long period of time, right? Like we're suffering through uniquely special circumstances for history, like
and we're
people
expected
are going to
to
look back
meet
on
that
this.
same like we're expected to meet the boomer standard of right of like you
No,
get some
fuck
type,
them.
and it's just like why are we expected to meet that You know, the situation. So
Mhm.
like the reason that the boomers were able to do what they were able to do is the atmosphere of the time. Every event that happened at that moment in time all came together, right? And that's just kind of like how it spun up. That's the direction it went. And now the younger generation is left with a world where we don't have anywhere. You made a world where you have all the power and then said, well, go get some power of your own. Go make, and it's like,
But then they entrenched it and fought you and
right,
stopped you from getting the power because it necessitated taking some of theirs away.
right. So and now here we are, right? And then those boomers have kids who are Gen X, and the Gen X generation. I mean, like there are some really awesome, and there's some good boomers out there too. Like this is not like a blanket statement, but like
Sure, and when we rip on boomers, we're
Not all
talking about
boomers.
boomers with institutional. Well, no, we're
yeah,
talking about boomers with institutional power because it's
right,
important to point out that like disenfranchised, like queer POC boomers were not the
right.
ones making the policies that killed them. Anyways, please continue, Jay.
Boomers in power. You know the power boomers. Okay, with
I
um.
prefer power bottoms.
Lol. I think everyone does.
But yeah, so you have like, you know, the power boomers, and then, you know, they create this world that's like impossible to survive in, but then you have Gen X, and like Gen X has this very much like fuck it. Watch it all fucking burn. Because my parents, like, this is why America is the way it is, I think, is one of our, is when it comes to voting and politics, right? Is my
Mm-hmm.
parents said to me, it doesn't matter who you fucking vote for because it's all bullshit. And me, when you're 5, 6 years old, you're like, well, mom, dad said it's all bullshit, so they're right, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
then you're listening to adults have adult conversations, and you're listening at like family gatherings, and they're all saying the same thing. It doesn't matter who you fucking vote for, Democrat, Republican, they're all motherfuckers, blah, 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 blah. So, doesn't matter. You don't have to do your research. You don't have to read in anyone's policies because they're all shit. So, that gets perpetuated. So Gen X, they're just like, whatever. And then so you have and then they're like, all right, listen here, millennials. If you go to school, you get a job, you're gonna make good money, and you're gonna change the world. And we all went, okay, we're gonna do that.
And we
And we
tried,
all
and then they said we're not like that.
then we
I
all went
trust
to
that.
college, and we all got educated, and we're like, hey, global warming is like bad, and like capitalism is like really bad, and the two of them combined are like super bad, and we should totally not do that anymore. And they're like, oh, it's your fancy college fucking education, you're in debt up to your eyeballs, I'm not gonna fucking listen to you. And it's like, well,
Why would I
fuck is
listen to
all.
you? You failed, and it's like you set us up. You
Like,
told us to do it. You made the system, you made the railroad, and you directed it directly off a cliff, and you like put it in the foggy mountain so that the conductor couldn't even see where the track was, and then you fucking blame them for it when you built the fucking road. Sorry.
exactly. And that's why, like, me with my upbringing, my own mental illnesses, whatever, me and my bullshit and baggage, combine that with being online and being like, you shouldn't be happy because genocide's happening in Palestine. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I I can't hold
Just remember
the
that people
weight
who say stuff
like,
like that are really mentally unhealthy themselves and are in
yeah.
massive amounts of anguish.
And I'm like, dude, just go
Like
outside and
if
look at a
someone
tree.
says you can't be happy because other bad stuff is happening, they've got some shit going on. Yeah, you should absolutely like be fucking paying attention what happens and be a conscientious human and care, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't experience joy or happiness just because there's like terrible shit happening, right? It shouldn't put a stop
That's the
on
fine
absolutely
line.
everything that happens. But at the same time, like I understand why it could be frustrating when like you're somebody who really does want to make a big difference and you're watching a genocide happen and everything that they ever told you in history and going to school is about how bad the Nazis were and how bad the Holocaust was and how bad Holocaust denial is and all this shit. And then suddenly
Mm-hmm.
it's happening right in front of you and you can witness it and you can see all this fucking propaganda happening and you want to speak
Yeah.
out about it. It feels infuriating and helpless and frustrating to like know better and want to do better and to see it and to see people turning a blind eye. And sometimes people can mistake other people surviving as callous indifference, and it's not anything that's emblematic or representative of you, but rather the fact that we live in a society where everybody is disenfranchised aside from those with institutional power, and a lot of those people are never going to get to have that same level of like institutional power, right? So we're all just struggling with what little we have, and it's a fucking shit show for everybody involved, right? And I think that's ultimately the whole important thing to remember, you know?
Yeah. I really
Like
think that
those people are not happy in the slightest.
right.
I promise you they're not.
And I have heard this like terminology of calling in versus calling out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like I really just feel like, if you're out there and you're one of these miserable motherfuckers on the internet who just can't get over your own shit, like find a group of people to like converse with face to face in your area and see if that changes you as a person. You know what I mean? Cuz like we have to. I think this is why also really where my dream of having this occult shop / meeting space is, because it's a third space. It's what we were talking, what you were kind of
Mm-hmm.
mentioning earlier. I want to create a third space. People need a place to gather and plan and talk and share and create. And
And just be a human.
right, that's being taken away from us faster than we can like comprehend, and
Do you
that's
know
why we're all
why though?
freaking the fuck out.
A
Hmm?
lot of third spaces are all like independent, right?
Right, yeah.
They're not like
They're not backed by an
fucking mega
institution.
workout centers. They're not like the fucking YMCA, although actually the YMCA is actually pretty influential and important for people who go to it, so I guess that's a bad example. Point being though,
Like Planet Fitness does not
like
give a shit, is not a it's not a
and it's
hangout
it's not really
spot.
a third it's not a third space if
Yeah.
like it's gonna cost a teenager $50 to go there every fucking time,
Right.
right? That's not feasible under the type of society we have. It's not like workable. And why all of this is happening is because of late stage capitalism and corporate capture and consolidation, right? The fact that these people have so much more and have so much more than they're ever going to need means that we have so much less than we ever should, right? So like we're literally taking away children's ability to go out and experience life in society and placing them in a box that is like literally akin to fucking what's the word I'm looking for? In a prison, solitary confinement. It's akin
Mhm.
to solitary confinement. It's not truly solitary confinement because you can like leave and see other people and you do have contact through your phone to other people, but most people spend a lot of their time in one solitary room these days, their bedroom, right? They're on
Yeah.
their phone, they're on their TV, they're on the game set. They leave their bedroom to like go, I don't know, make food in the kitchen or use the washroom, or like maybe force themselves to sit in the living room for a little bit because living rooms are starting to fall into fucking disuse because we don't even like sit with each other anymore. We all just sit in these little cubicalized, little individualized spaces, right? And then you take people who are stuck in a cage like that and you give them this other little square to look into that's their only window outwards. Of course they're going to be letting out rage and pain and anguish, you know, because
Mhm.
they live in a society that fundamentally denies them their rights to freedom and human exchange and connection, right? And denies them even like the ability to have a healthy fucking diet and be well provided for and have clean
Oh,
drinking water in some instances, right?
the
We've
diet
literally
thing.
taken the humanity out of being a human. We're just fucking profit makers now. We're literally human cattle, and
Literally.
that's the problem. And that's why people are so mean on the internet, because they don't necessarily always have the language or the sight to recognize that this is what's happening and to lash out in other regards. Their true anguish is not with you or you getting a house, but rather their inability to ever even think of fucking accessing it for themselves and
And me,
feeling
I
like
feel
they have
terrible. You know what I mean? Like, I feel terrible that,
You
like,
shouldn't,
not
though.
everyone can
Here's the
access
thing.
that,
Nobody
you
should
know?
feel bad for having a house. We should feel bad that politicians are allowed to continue to make decisions that keep people from having
Yeah, that's
houses,
what I
right?
mean. Like, I
Like,
feel terrible that we don't
I
live in a
and I
world
know that
that,
you
yeah.
mean that, right? But like
Mhm.
that's what I'm getting at too, is that like that's the real crux, right?
Mhm.
Everybody deserves a house. Everybody, period.
Everyone.
No fucking full stop. Everybody
Yeah.
deserves a house,
And we
right?
can do it.
And the reason that you feel bad is because somebody else doesn't have a house, the long and short of it, right? You
Right.
shouldn't be homeless. You should not be in a precarious position. And if you are in a precarious position, it doesn't help you do better for anybody. Because if you're somebody who actually makes social change, what does housing scarcity do for you? Make it
Right.
so that you can't get up and actually have the free time to actually do something conductive, conducive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the
Mhm.
fact that we take every Sunday to sit here and have discourse about society, it may not seem as important as like, I don't know, protest organizing, and it certainly isn't, but we're contributing to a conversation, right? We're pushing a narrative of this is what's happening in our world and we're tired of putting up with it, right? And
Mhm.
even if that's a little inch by inch, everything's connected. Every individual who watches this or listens this is going to go talk to other people, and if those ideas that we have are good, it doesn't matter if it comes from a witchcraft podcast, the idea will be passed on without the trappings of the people who said it in the first place, right?
Right.
And those ideas will reach far beyond us, right? Because everybody feels this way. Nobody's fucking happy with society from the
No.
ultra rich, right?
Yeah.
Everybody else who's
And
just
even
like
them,
fucking
they're
got enough
like,
is just like
and even the ultra rich, because we talk
they're
about that all
like
the time. Like, are they really happy? You know?
mm,
We
probably not.
we were watching this adult animated cartoon called Praise Petey. We like ended up binging the entire series. Was it on Hulu? I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, it was Hulu. And so the premise of the show is this New York young socialite. She inherits her dad's cult in somewhere in like the rural South.
North Carolina, South
North,
Carolina, one of the
one of the
Carolinas.
Carolina, yeah. So she uproots her life in New York City and she is running this cult, right? So, but like a lot of the it's like a lot of like the things that like it's such a good social commentary. Like I really recommend that. Like I think it would really vibe with the audience of this podcast. I'm trying to think. I just had a thought about the damn show. Now I can't remember why I mentioned it because it had a really poignant thing of kind of what we were talking about. And then I guess it doesn't matter because I don't know
You
why
want
I
to be a
do
cult leader.
well,
That
not
was the
some.
point.
Well, a cult leader, but a good cult. I always say, I want to be a good cult leader. Yeah, I don't know, but anyway, it's a good show. You should watch. There's a lot of commentary about like how capitalism is shit and whatnot. Oh no, it
Well,
was the
I'll go on
mom.
a short
That's what
rant
it
then.
was. It was about rich people.
There you go.
Petey's mom is some rich, whatever, very important New York person, and she has a coach for everything. Her accountability coach, her like
Of
for every
course.
facet of human emotion, like every facet of human life and human emotion, she has a coach for. So Petey went to the ATM. Mom, the money didn't come out of the ATM. Like, why? Well, my accountability coach says, you need to learn how to make your own money now, whatever. But it really made me realize I was like, I have been like, especially since Threads has gotten more of the Twitter people over. No shade on anyone who is a coach. But the fact that like we as the lower class, the poor people, the peasantry, the fact that we need to coach you rich motherfuckers into feeling appropriately, like this is how you emotion. This is how you speak to people. This is how you hold yourself accountable for your fucking actions. The fact that we have to teach you how to be a human, this is a real problem. Like we've gotten it's too much. And so like on one hand, good for you coaches out there teaching the rich people how to be a human. Very, very good for you. But also very sad for you that we have to do this. Like this is where we've gotten to. Now I
That
know in
your
the
job
cartoon,
needs to exist.
like I know in the cartoon, it's kind of like blown out of proportion, right? That's the point of a cartoon. But there are a lot of fucking coaches out there. Like you can find a coach for anything. Like you could probably find a coach for like how to take a better shit. Like I swear, there is a coach
It
for
involves
everything
getting
out
a
there.
squatty potty.
Right. There you go. I am your shitting coach. But it's disheartening to see that we need it's like you were saying earlier, Sophia, we've forgotten how to human. Like we're just generating profit for the sake of
No, I said
profit.
they've
Like
we've it's not that we've forgotten. I feel that language and framing is always important. It's that they took the humanity out of being human.
right,
Or,
exactly.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have a say in it. We've been forced to it, you know?
Right. Yeah. And so and then that comes in where we need coaches to teach us how to human again. Like it's just really, really fucking bizarre the way that it's like,
How to human?
right. And I'm thinking to myself, so the narrative that we're fed, right? So in order to be a perfect human specimen in the modern age of capitalism, you must hustle. So you got to work 60 to 80 hours a week, right? Get your hustle on, get your grind on, whatever the fuck that means, okay? So you're supposed to grind for 60 to 80 hours a week, but then have a thriving social life because you got to go out to these hot new spots and spend money here and have your $15 drink. And you're supposed to like be vegan, right? Like just have a really healthy plant-based diet. And I just it's unrealistic, and you're supposed to work out. Like where do you have all this time? Like where does it come from? And I just can't believe that like people really strive for that. And it's just like, no, dude. That's not the point of life. It's just strive for this like
Well, that's the
unachievable
Sigma
goal.
hustle grind set culture. It's not necessarily like that's what being human is. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna plug the same content creator that I just referenced a little bit ago. I'm gonna bring him back up and talk about the specific video. Hang on.
And then I see a lot of
Elliot
content
Sang.
creators that are like positivity creators, and they just post pictures of them
Mhm.
like dancing and smiling and telling you to have a good day. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't work
Fuck
for me
you.
either. I
This
know.
is the one. Elliot Sang, SANG. Having ADHD, a nightmare under capitalism. And the subtitle is Having ADHD in a Regimented World. And the whole thing that like he goes into is that like ADHD is actually a modern phenomenon because we don't like focus in the way that capitalism expects us to operate and like be productive under clock time, which is to say like 12-hour clocks, you know what I
I've
mean? And
tried.
like back in old times how like average workers would work would be like an 8-hour day, like a heavy day, and then a light day of work the next day, like 2 hours, you know what I mean? And it
Mm-hmm.
would be this rotation of heavy day, light day, heavy day, light day, you know, and people would like do this kind of rotational work balance where like they always took time to rest and they'd have like fucking midday naps, as I'm sure you know about.
Mm-hmm.
And like people like literally since the dawn of time have worked a very specific way, and capitalism is this abnormal aberration where we're like literally just working to make money for these people, and we do it in a way that's maximizing of their profits and minimizing of our humanity, right? So that's why like we get people having to work these constant like 8-hour days every day, right? Because like even back in the day when we did do long heavy work, it was only in the harvest season, right? And it was only for a set period of time.
Right.
And it's because there was a sense of urgency behind it, right?
Because
It's
winter was
not that like
coming and you had to hunker
ADHD
down.
and like also the food would go to rot if you didn't harvest it, and then you'd starve in winter. There's so many things to it, right? So there's a sense of urgency and importance which has always motivated ADHD people. And it's not even that like ADHD is an inherent human quality. It's just that like it's a type of person who specifically struggles under capitalism and clock time in like this forced labor efficiency landscape that we have to navigate, right?
What
So like,
was the name of
yeah,
that creator again? I want to pop it in the chat for Tinker.
I will get the exact video. It's Elliot Sang.
Sang,
Hang on.
SANG.
Yeah, he's superb. I've just been like binging his stuff for like the past 3 days off and on. I'm an audiobook nerd, so like I just got my audiobook for the month. I also actually got a free one through a glitch when my spirits were like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you a little something. Here you go. Where should I post this? Voice text.
Yeah, voice text is fine. I can come.
There you go. ADHD, A Nightmare Under Capitalism by Elliot Sang. Superb video, superb discussion. But yeah, so like a lot of this Sigma hustle grind set, again, like I said, comes down to capitalism trying to exploit a certain level of labor efficiency out of people because it's always about exponential growths and how much more we can squeeze, right? And that's the problem about the old idiom with them. Give them an inch and they'll take a mile. That's what they've been doing, but it's like give them a mile and they'll take a fucking globe. And they
Right.
literally want to make it where like every aspect of your life is min-maxed to drive them as much fucking possible profits as ever, because everything's about growth. Sustenance is never enough, right? And that's the problem. It's a cancer. It's like literally the fucking hollow, empty, cannibalistic spirit that eats endlessly to the point where it chews its own fucking lips off, right? It's a sickness. It's a disease. We have to actively fight it, right? And that's why I'm so passionate about fucking calling it out where it is, because like it is pure dehumanization and it's pure in its most distilled form. And like if we don't stand up and fight against it, it'll consume every single human being that you've ever known, loved, or cared about, you know? And ultimately it's our responsibility. This is like also the here's the thing though, it feels helpless, right?
Right, yeah. That's
You
the
know who
part.
else felt helpless? Hold
Hmm.
on though. You know who else felt helpless?
Hmm.
Frodo. Right?
I should really watch Lord of the Rings. I'm a bad
I
nerd and a bad witch. I have
I
not consumed the trilogy yet in my
I
life.
always come back to the Sam quote, the
Hmm.
one that just makes me tear up thinking about it, where the stories that mattered most are the ones where they seemed so hopeless that you thought, how could these people ever go back to living their lives after all they've been through? But you know that those are the stories that had to have a happy ending, because those are I can't remember exactly how it goes, but you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We're in one of those stories. We're fighting against an evil empire that is willing to dehumanize and destroy every single sovereign living being on this planet. We have an evil so demonstrable and clear and present that stories that we write in fiction fail to capture the true severity and grim evil that we face in our world. When even our fictitious depictions of evil fall short of the true and clear present threat, you know we're living in a story. And we're witches. We have the power to fight back. That's what it's always been about. That's why I will not necessarily give up the left hand path easily, because I'm not going to go around and throw curses at people who don't deserve it. But ultimately, we have to fight back. We're not in a situation where we can just roll up and give up. We're literal people who practice fucking magic in a world deeply entrenched by oppression. If not us, who? If not now, when?
Right, and
It's
then
always been a story.
that's where like the pressure always comes in for someone like me, because it's like, all right, well, go put your superhero cape on and fly around the world and fix it. And
You look though, you have to operate within like the capabilities of what you have, right? You don't have a
right,
superhero cape, do you?
I don't, and I don't have the
What
ability
do
to
you
fly
have
around the
though?
world. Hmm.
What do you have though?
I mean, I have this podcast, so I always look at the podcast as like a way of,
It's a
spreading a
strong
message.
thing,
Mm.
and you've done a
And that's why
lot
we
with
need
it. I
and that's why
can't.
we need third spaces too, because like what we do
Mm-hmm.
here in the podcast, this could be this could be a group of 20 people in a coffee shop like talking about, hey, we should really not have capitalism, or so we're all not going to, I don't know, we're all just going to collectively not shop at Starbucks or not shop at these big corporations. We're just going to go to
I
all
have
these.
actually done a lifetime boycott of Starbucks.
Unfortunately, I will admit we did get Starbucks the other day. It was around the area. We hadn't had it in a while.
Or
But
bad.
we were
I'm
bad.
not judging you.
Yeah. But that's the other thing too. If you were like, I remember we talked about like which companies own everything. Like if you were to really go down the rabbit hole, like I don't think there would be much of anything that any of us could purchase
No, you'd be
without
surprised. There's
any.
actually quite a bit that you can purchase that doesn't infringe on certain boycotts.
Well, that's good. But
Yeah, the
to
more that I've
say that
engaged in
all
boycotts,
company,
it's
yeah,
easier. It's not.
to find a multi-billion-dollar company that doesn't do harm in some way though is, you know.
Well, I mean, yeah, because there is no way to do no harm under capitalism. That's why we focus on the egregious stuff when it happens and try to focus on like changing the system as a whole, right? Because if we're sitting here chasing after every ill that it does, we're never going to succeed. And like they low key expect us to be doing that because that's how they keep us running around. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So like don't play that game, you know? One of my favorite quotes I always say is the only way to win a game that's rigged is to not play at all.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Like I always think about what Evo said when we had him on the show, is that I live as though I am truly free, even though I know I am not.
Mm-hmm.
And that just, it rattles in my brain a lot. Because that's kind of like, it's kind of like how I want to live my life. And I think like one of the steps to doing that, I always think about like, all right, well, I'm gonna get a house, and then like that's my little like place of freedom that I can do whatever I want. Like if I want to have, I can do whatever I want in that space, pretty much within reason. I can run my witch shop from there. It's my headquarters. It's my base of operations. It's like that's where it all starts. It's where it all the magic happens, kind of thing. Um, just kind of when I go back. I was looking in the chat here. Oh, Tink was saying, "Yep, no ethical consumption under capitalism." But we can tell motherfuckers to fuck off when they support genocide. Yes, we can absolutely do that.
Exactly. And that's why, like, for me, I realized that I don't even want to reward some of these companies when they stop supporting genocide. Like,
Right,
Starbucks
yeah.
has been on the there's a tolerance level, right? And like Starbucks has been on the wrong side of history so many fucking times that I am done with them as a
Because
company.
wasn't
You
it
have
like when they
fucked
first
around too many
started?
times. You're never getting a single fucking dollar from me again as long as I live. Eat shit.
Yeah, because wasn't it like when Starbucks first started, wasn't like people were like, well, are you ethically sourcing your coffee? Like, I think that was one of the first things that like they were kind of wrapped up in, was the sourcing
I
of
don't
the
know.
coffee. Starbucks tastes
I
like
know they
shit
were
anyways.
I
I
know they
like
were involved in the
Starbucks
sourcing
though.
of coffee because like well, like the problem is they have good bean selection and roasters, right? Like, so they do provide a type of product that is desirable to people. But
Hmm.
then the problem is that type of product is like, even the coffee industry is hyper exploitative, right? Like a
Oh
lot of
god, yeah.
the physical labor is almost always explicitly done by people of color in countries where they can afford to pay them far less than they pay a worker here. And even the workers here who work in the warehouses unloading it are always like minority and low income people stuck doing like really hardcore, depressing warehouse work where they're treated like shit and not respected, and the warehouse leads never want them to have a fucking union, and if you advocate for a union, they run you off. I actually like helped unionize a warehouse that I used to work at. I wasn't like the person who led the unionizing incentive, but I was the one who was very vocal about it. So the company thought it was me who was running it. So they like came down hard on me, which really sucked being the only trans woman at the company and having just come out. But the union succeeded because of that, and they never figured out who the guy who got the union in was. And they were mad about it afterwards, so they went out of their way to harass me and fire me over bullshit. And I like threatened to sue and got like the parent company involved and like had a negotiation. And the guy who ran the parent company was super mad at what had been going on in the company because like it was actually legally grounds for a lawsuit. So like he offered a severance package and my lawyer recommended that I take it. So I took it. Like it was a whole fucking thing. This is before you even met me, honestly. This was like maybe 2 years before we met. I was still in Vancouver at the time. But like, yeah, I was working in a coffee warehouse when that happened, right? So I've seen firsthand how fucking unethical the industry is. Like, and I've literally picked a human tooth out of a coffee bag one time.
Oh, rough.
Yeah. Yeah, not to make y'all want to stop drinking coffee, but just remember that a lot of the places that this coffee comes from is under conflict, right?
I already know that there's, an acceptable level of rat feces in all of the food that I consume, so it's fine. It's fine.
Not your coffee beans, luckily. There's no rat feces in coffee beans because rats
healthy.
Can't really eat the coffee bean.
Yeah, because it's like poison, I mean? And that's the other funny thing about humans
also,
is we're addicted to this poison, caffeine.
and if caffeine's not, if coffee beans aren't roasted from their green state, they're so hard they'll physically break your teeth if you try to chew them. Did you know that?
I did not.
They're goddamn inedible if you don't like process them to remove the outer layers, like the cherry on the outside, and then roast the pits, the centers, the two halves of the bean, right? You do that, and then you get your coffee bean as you see it now, right? And there's like 2 beans per cherry. But it's like a whole fucking process, and they have to like dry it and shuck it and like remove the things from it, and you get like these 2 centerpieces that are green of varying intensity depending on the nutrient density and what type of coffee it is and where it comes from. And just to flex that I know what I'm talking about, Sumatran coffee is from an island called Sumatra, and it's widely regarded as some of the best beans in the world because of the density of the chemical that turns it the blue-green that indicates that it's got a lot of like quality behind it. But the real ironic tragedy is like that color also indicates its caffeine content, right? And then because this is a really it's an expensive bean, people buy it and roast it to dark roast, which is ironic because it like has the highest caffeine content, and then they roast it to like the lowest caffeine setting, and it's like, you fools.
I know, I was remembering what you were saying about that, how like light roast coffee actually has more caffeine, even though
because the longer you roast it, the more you roast the chemical out of it. Yep. Because dark roast tastes heavier.
Yeah, it just hits your stomach harder. It just makes you shit faster.
Well,
that's
dark roast has a different. I'm not. So here's the thing. I worked in a coffee warehouse and in the coffee industry. I'm not a barista expert, nor am I a roast master, like the person who does the roasting. So like I don't know all that shit. Yeah, I worked with the green beans. I could even like sort and recondition and grade green beans actually, but I don't work with them post roasting really. Anyways, I think there's a chemical composition change that happens based on how long you roast it because you get that very gritty, gravelly taste to it. You know what I mean? And that's why people are like, I want the dark roast because they think that the worse it tastes, the heavier, more concentrated it is. It's not how it works. No, you want caffeine? You want to perk your tits up and fucking be wired to the road? Grab yourself some light roast and take a very big jar of it and get it black so that it just hits you with no filtration. You down that shit and you'll be fucking fine, I promise you.
Yeah. I don't know if I could do that. I like my creams and my sweet things in my coffee.
Witches Betwixt, where we muse about the horrors of living in late stage capitalism and propose solutions for it, and then gravitate to talking about various type of coffee roasts within a 15-minute span.
Because honestly, coffee just makes everything better. So right, like that's, I've definitely become one of those people that's like, don't talk to me till I've had my coffee kind of thing. Because I'm like, I just can't function. I just can't face the day until I've had that little bit of whatever that is.
I can't live without my Joe.
Did someone say ADHD?
Coffee,
yes.
Don't you ever leave me.
This is the ADHD podcast. Probably if a therapist was to come in here, we would all be diagnosed very quickly. And you got ADHD.
What?
You got ADHD. You got ADHD.
Listen.
I had 2 cups this morning.
2 cups of ADHD?
Yes!
Yeah. I've had 2 cups of mental illness. What have you had?
Don't forget to drink your mental illness.
I just came back from dissociating for 30 minutes and I'm like, what? Coffee?
Coffee? What?
You were like, oh no, they're talking about capitalism again. Let's just fucking a-hole into TikTok or something for 35 minutes.
I just seriously as soon as Palestine or Israel or Nazis get mentioned, my soul just leaves my body at this point. I had a whole mental breakdown about I'm ashamed to be a Jew, and it's just the whole situation is just too much for me. It's just too much.
You're not pro-Israeli. Nobody's really pointing the finger at you.
Obviously, but there is an association there, and no one is right in this situation, and I can't wrap my head around how a nation of people who have been subjected to the absolute worst that humanity has to offer can then turn around and inflict the same her atrocities upon another people. And it doesn't matter if they started it doesn't matter if they bombed you first. It's just, you shouldn't be, just stop, just
I
fucking
don't even buy
stop.
that they started it narrative, honestly. But that's a whole nother thing.
No, what'd you say?
Oh, hang on just 2 seconds, I have to deliver a package.
So Dawn in the chat was saying, if you look under your seats, you'll find your diagnosis.
Oh my god!
I
found water. Drink water. Good for all of your mental problems. Cure your mental illness. Drink enough water. Real medical advice.
There's a unicorn under my seat.
There's a unicorn under your seat. Congratulations, you definitely have ADHD.
But no, I will repeat the hail and say free Palestine.
Yes, free Palestine. Absolutely.
Let Gaza live, goddammit, and stop bombing children.
Real.
Get
rid of all the bombs. All the bombs. Just poof.
But then what would the world look like if there was no war? Would there be too many of us? I think about population control a lot. Is war just this natural population control that humans have built into our psyche?
That's eugenics. That's eugenics. Let's be real. That's eugenics. Population control isn't really a thing. It's a thing that rich people talk about as a theoretical issue. The problem never has been the amount of people in the world. The problem always has been the resource distribution and the methods by which we acquire and utilize it, right? Which is capitalism.
Yeah,
it's never been a population number.
It's been on my mind because I have this book called The Encyclopedia of Queer Myth and Spirit, and it is an out-of-print book. It's a book that Brew got me early on in our relationship. It was actually much cheaper.
Remember?
It was so cheap. It was $50, and then now it's worth $150, I think. But anyway, one of my out of print.
Wanted in them pants.
But
I'd buy anything.
So
happy 4-year anniversary, by the way, babe.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we were supposed to go away, but we didn't because of snow. But anyway, Encyclopedia of Queer Myth and Spirit, and we mentioned this. I mentioned this book like early on in the podcast because I wanted to do whole like directed episodes about like some of the things that we would come across in here, but I realized we're not that kind of podcast and we don't have the brain power to do that. So, but I did kind of want to kind of shed some light on this book and kind of share some of the things that are in it. And one of the first entries in here is about Inuit shamanism and Inuit mythology, and sort of like one of their creation myths was that there was actually two male entities that these male entities existed, and then they decided that they wanted to be lovers, and they became lovers, and one of them became pregnant, realizing that I don't have the body part to push out this child, right? So they then, because they're a god, because gods, they then fashion themselves a body part, a vagina to push out the baby, and then they have this sort of humanity, right? And that's sort of like this creation myth here. But what was interesting to me in this one was that the one who I guess became the woman, I guess if you want to put it that way, the one who gave birth,
the vagina bearer,
right? Then came around to say like
bottoms.
So basically, it was like they created humanity, and then humanity kept creating more people, right? And so this god then is like, there's too many people, not good. We're gonna have war, and we're gonna have death, and because people weren't dying, I think that was like the problem, I guess. Like in this particular story, is that people, like human souls, wouldn't die. Like humans were also immortal, and so like because we weren't dying and recycling the earth, it was just kind of like we were just filling up and taking up space, and so that's why we have war and death, like according to this like kind of Inuit myth. I thought that was kind of interesting to share because I was kind of thinking about that in terms of like, well, is war just something like kind of coded into us, right? Like, are we just ever going to get it together and just maybe not kill each other?
No, we can definitely get past war. And in fact, a lot of indigenous culture specifically has talked about the need for that. It's just that, like, we have to have ways to explain how we've been, because there has been a lot of conflict, and it makes sense that, like, we try to rationalize things in post very often as humans, right? We fight and then we try to figure out why, right? So it's very easy to take something that's happened and to surmise that it's an intrinsic quality or characteristic, when in reality it's a observation of something in post, right? Our human nature is relevant to the time that we live in, right? One could say it's human nature now to want to eat sugary food and sit on your phone, but 1,000 years ago it would have been hunting or some shit, right?
Right, yeah. That's very true. We are all subject to the interesting times in which we live.
You can't like treat it like it's a uniform thing, right? There is no objective observable human nature other than like the base needs that we have for like community connection and the stuff that we can verifiably see that when we do without, we suffer, which connection is proven to be one of those things, right? Is sitting on our phone? No, but that's because it gives us a form of connection that we suffer without, right?
But it's false.
And that's why people use phones. But it is in a way, but it's also not, because the people are still real, right?
Yeah.
It's false in the way that it emotionally distances us from each other,
Yeah.
but it's still just as real as anything else in the impact that it has. The problem is that we're not in person, and we haven't developed the socialized empathy to understand how to treat each other with this new medium of communication that a lot of people who would never embrace a new technology are starting to get into. That's another part of it, right? Like when the internet was new,
I know some of these boomer posts are like, made toast
to
today.
Be on it, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, when somebody was on the internet, it's because they wanted to be on the internet.
Yeah.
It's because it was exciting. It wasn't because it was the only thing left available in a society that had evaporated everything else and forced everybody online, because then you could fucking streamline their attention and make more profit off of like just passing time, right?
Well,
Whereas
there's
back
also a
in the day,
sense
leisure
of
time.
being
Go
online
ahead.
versus offline too in those early days of the internet and internet culture, because like you were either online, like when you were online you were online, and when you were offline you were offline. There was a very big distinction, and I'm
Right,
talking
because you
about like,
left your
yeah,
computer, but
right,
now
because
the internet's in your pocket.
right, because it was just linked to that one machine. But like it was super cool when the internet came to your pocket, but I just don't think we realized how dangerous that became, like how
Devastating.
devastating, yeah, to the human psyche, like that became.
Well, again, like I think that it's a reaction because, like I said, there's third spaces have been destroyed, and like
Mm-hmm.
Elliot Sang talks about in his videos, like people using phones as a primary form of communication and connection is a replacement for not being able to access those spaces, right? Because a lot of those people would much rather be there to begin with, but they don't have that option, right? So like it's very often people making the best with what they have. It's not that the technology is like sinister or like fundamentally changing us, not that you're saying that either, but just that like that gets talked about a lot, right? And everybody wants to really often just say like phones are the issue and social media is the issue, when in reality like they're reflections of the society that we've built and how people have the last vestiges of their agency in those spaces. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why they're so addicting, is because they give you some form of connection and agency, right? And that's what all humans want, but our society systematically denies from us to keep us disenfranchised and working, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
the and even like what I was going to say earlier, even leisure time now is profitable. Like back in the day, you could just
Yeah.
go sit in a park and like read a book, and granted the book would be profit, but they wouldn't be making money from you constantly by passing advertisements in front of you. Now if you don't even pay for fucking YouTube premium, you're going to be listening to an advert every fucking 10 minutes on the thing, right?
Yeah.
It's the same shit. They're trying to make more money every single moment. And
And
the fundamental
also
problem is the
pressure
people running
us
our society.
and also pressure us to monetize our leisure time too, because I
Yeah, and to
often
turn
have
everything
these
into a hustle
thoughts.
because then they can make more money off of it.
Like I played No Man's Sky for like fucking 10 hours the other day, or maybe 8, I don't know. I played it all fucking day. And when I started playing, I was like, "Oh, I should stream this because build your audience and have more people." And I'm like, "No, because I just want to sit here and be fucking silent and play No Man's Sky. Like, I don't want to feel like I have to entertain an audience or, you know what I mean? Like, but like that thought was there, and then so then I was playing the game, and I had to like overcome my own like guilt over not trying to like monetize or hustle or like make my leisure time into something like, or my brand or my, you know what I mean? Because like there's some value in, like when you're trying to grow a podcast like this, like there's some value in learning digital marketing techniques, right, to spread your message. But it's also a really slippery slope, because then you're like, it can start to, like, at least with me, like it starts to be like, well, you should be monetizing every goddamn thing you do, you know? And the pressure is really there, and it's just it's a sickness, and it needs to stop.
Right, and that's how they get you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
When even your leisure time has to be something that you can profit off of, right?
Right.
And then they pay people to gaslight you and tell you that the whole reason you're not successful is because you don't have passions, you're lazy, you watch TV all day, and they gaslight you about the very conditions that they create and force you to exist under,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't want to sell you anything that'll present you a relevant remedy. They want to present you with the cage because that's all they want for you. Like to quote System of a Down, back in like 1998, I think it was, they're trying to build a prison for you and me to live in, for baby, you and me.
That's System of a
Well,
Down
research
later.
and success for drug policy shows
Yeah,
that
I was gonna
system
say.
treatment should be increased.
This sounds like a familiar song that I
Law
know.
enforcement decreed while enforcing mandatory minimum sentencing. Yeah.
Right, we all grew up listening to System of a Down and wonder why we're not. Why are you guys so radical in your
System of
political
a Down
beliefs?
and
Like-
fucking yeah, that's actually something that really shocked me too, is looking at modern mainstream music. And like back in the day, you would listen to like that song that I was just quoting. It's called The Prison Song by System
Yeah.
of a Down.
Mhm.
And it was a banger, and they were putting it on every fucking radio, and it was being critical of like the fucking state of society itself. And it'd be followed up by like Rage Against the Machine, Killing in the Name of, right? Critical
Mhm.
of like white supremacy in like patriarchal structures, and how like cops and forces members are actually very often just KKK members looking to utilize force by another means, right?
Honestly,
Like,
I never thought I would say this, but I think Green Day might save us all. Never thought I'd say this. I'm really putting my hope with Green Day. Okay, so I know I was more of a Blink fan than a Green Day fan. Whatever. That's just my personal preference. But I have to say, yeah, I know. I see you flipping me off. I see you.
I'm just shocked. I'm still
Rue is flipping
shocked
me
by
off.
your previous statement.
Green Day is going to save us all. Okay, so are they a super commercialized pop punk band? Sure, yeah, fine. But the fact that they blew people's minds with this American Idiot, like, lyric change, you know, I'm not going to be a part of the MAGA agenda or MAGA propaganda, whatever the fuck the lyric change was. The fact that the dumb motherfuckers that the song was clearly about, like, they didn't realize that song was about them until they made the change.
Begin
So I'm like,
with.
you really thought that like
Yeah.
the American idiots were us? You really fucking thought that? Like, joke's on you, bro. And they are losing their fucking minds. And so I don't know, Green Day, they're like making I've seen them more in the media, so I think they're probably doing some tour or like a new album coming out or something like that. But yeah, I think they might save us all because they've spanned a couple generations with their music. You know, older people, younger people, all seem to kind of collectively enjoy Green Day. So I don't know. Green Day is gonna save us all.
I'm on team Keanu's gonna save us all.
Okay, yeah. Did he join Green
because
Day?
you know, like no, but like think about it. Like he's the one, right? He's Neo. Like class consciousness didn't exist before the Matrix.
Keanu /
And
Neo / John Wick will.
he's in slash Johnny Silverhand, you know.
Right. I don't know if this is
always the rebel fighting against fucking corruption and evil and the wicked, right?
What's also
Keanu
neat.
Reeves will rise up and with his dual pistols free us all by the slaughter of every oil executive.
Very true. And also, I don't know if this is true, but Star Wars fandom rumor mill says that Keanu's going to be cast as Revan, Darth Revan, who is this very interesting character.
That would actually take me back to watching Star Wars if they fucking did the Old Republic. Holy shit.
Yeah, I think they will. I think they're gonna, because there's so much material there. Like, they'd be dumb not to.
Do you want to nerd dump about Revan, or should I? And granted, I know we've been going for like an hour and 10, but
yeah, we're like a little over it. But if you want to nerd dump a little bit, we could end on a nerd dump. But Revan is a really cool character that bounces between the dark and the light.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil too much, because like if they do bring Revan in, they're probably going to bring it in the series of events that happens with KOTOR 1. You know what I mean?
And then it's like, well, how closely will they follow the games? So, you know, I'm sure they'll take some artistic liberties. But I don't know if it's real.
Twist at the end is going to be the same thing, I'm sure, if they do it.
Yeah.
Well, like, here's the thing. Hollywood executives are tirelessly out of it ideas, because they constantly like keep rehashing everything that's already been done. The fucking Cuphead animated show, for fuck's sakes. Like, they literally look for anything new that has life so they can bleed it dry, right?
Milk that
guarantee
cash cow.
They're gonna do KOTOR. It's one of the most beloved fucking Star Wars things, and it's one part of the canon that they haven't really established much in the film franchise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gives them pretty much unparalleled freedom to use like a whole new cast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Revan's like basically
a gray Jedi.
He's
I
like
guess.
he's the equivalent of Jesus in the Force.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me of like similar to Luke's kind of, you know, balance between the light and the dark and whatnot. But yeah, Revan is a really cool character. But to have Keanu play Revan, that would be A+ for sure.
And Keanu's gonna be like, just one question. Yeah, and then he'll be like, can I get a pistol? And we're like, God damn it.
Only sword. No guns.
Well, actually, if you were to do lore accurate Revan, when he wakes up, which would be at the start of the first film, he does not have a lightsaber,
Right.
but he has access to blasters and vibro swords. So Revan using blasters would be lore accurate. To have Keanu Reeves fucking walking around John Wicking motherfuckers until he gets his hand on a sword, then he goes Johnny Silverhand on them. Yeah. And then next thing you know, he finally gets his lightsaber and then does the iconic Revan 2-weapon fighting sword style, because everybody knows he fought with 2 full-size lightsabers and was a beast about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so expect a hardcore motherfucker of Johnny Depp, not Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp.
Keanu Reeves gets
Revan.
Johnny Depp could be Malik, his apprentice who tries to kill him. Yeah, that'd be fucking perfect.
Yeah, I'd watch that movie. I'd watch
and imagine Johnny Depp with no jaw while like Keanu Reeves is like fighting him. He's like, you are my teacher. You tried to fucking kill me. And they're like going at it. Like everybody would watch that. We'd all be in theaters. Disney, hire us.
Right. We'll write the script. We'll get on it. Hire us as the writers.
Yeah. Johnny Depp as a villain.
Right. Well, he was a villain actually in Grindelwald.
In real life.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I think that came out that she was actually kind of more the villain in that situation.
I watched a video on this. People really want to reduce it to like he was bad, she was bad. It was mutual abuse. They both abused each other, you know?
Yeah. I mean, usually
they both did fucked up shit.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna reduce it to say like it was two sides, you know, but like
I just feel bad that it was so publicized, you know, that their shit was so publicized. You know, that's just I feel bad for them in that regard, you know, that it had to be so public.
Well, that's the cost of fame, is you never get to live without scrutiny ever again.
Right. So,
you know, the public feels
I like being able to go in
indebted.
my rock and definitely.
That's part of why I never wanted our podcast to blow up.
Yeah, like there's a certain level of notoriety that like I feel like I'd be comfortable with, but like Johnny Depp level of notoriety, I don't know. Like I don't like the idea of paparazzi, you know.
Catch this for an audio cue.
What? I
couldn't hear it?
No, I couldn't hear anything.
I was ripping a bomb the whole time.
I was like, I'm waiting for it. But I didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
That sucks.
All good.
Yeah, I was ripping the bong.
Well, we're like 22 minutes over our usual hour time. We got 22 bonus minutes of us blathering on about the things that we blather on about. Thank you to Tink and Chris and Dawn. All of you were in the chat here today. I don't think I missed anyone else. Yeah, I think that's everybody that I saw here. So thank you for coming in and hanging out with us. We appreciate it. And I guess any concluding thoughts from the squad here?
If you say be gay, do crime, you're legally obligated to not be afraid when the cops show up. Not saying anybody should call the cops, but like don't do crime and then get mad at other people when trouble pops up, because that's the point of crime, is to cause trouble, right?
Sure.
And to break unjust rules. So do it with the full-hearted expectation that reprimand will come, and be prepared for it.
That's a good solid amount of wisdom to share. All right, everybody, we are going to head out of here, and we will see you all in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.